Kia ora e te whānau. Welcome to this episode of Light Lunch. We've got a special episode in that we have got our first duo host set up. Floriana is our new Chloe, Regional Events Lead at the Institute, and we'll be taking over Light Lunch in the coming weeks. So we thought we'd start out with two, and then I will remove myself in the coming episodes. Also very excited to welcome Dan and Mike from Comfortech, and I'll pass it over to you guys to introduce yourselves.
Yeah, cool. So my name's Dan. I work for Comfortech, and my role in Comfortech is looking after specifiers. So I have a team of 4 guys across the country, and we provide technical support, advice, specifically around our products and how we're related to the industry, to architects. We support through design, providing them the information that they need, and that sort of transfers and translates onto site. We've got quite a lot of insight into the way that they're specifying and designing, and we try and pass that information on to the builders and the contractors when they arrive to site. So yeah, I've got a number of guys, and I've been doing it for about 7 years now.
Thanks, Dan. And Mike.
Yeah, so I'm Mike. So I'm the product specialist for ceilings and walls, an ex-installer. So yeah, I've been in this role about 7 or 8 years now. So my role, I look after the technical side of things in terms of providing information. So that's supporting specifiers, architects, designers, engineers, and then I support Dan's team in terms of this specification where that's required. But I'm also head out to site, so I deal a lot with contractors in terms of providing solutions to them. So yeah, it's I get to see the full spectrum, I suppose. So it's an interesting role.
Wonderful. You have some great insights for us. So as we usually run the Light Lunch, we're going to start with the heavy hitting questions. What's keeping you up at night? So I'll just go between Dan and Mike. So if you want to kick us off, Dan, with your first thing that is keeping you up at night.
Yeah, so recently I guess things out in the industry and in the market right now, they're pretty tough, and people are competing pretty heavily. Something that we've seen a lot of across the history of our involvement in the space is, but even more so now, will be variations from a builder's perspective when you're putting a project out to a subcontractor or a whole range of subcontractors to get pricing in. You rely on them quite heavily in their experience to know what it is that they're pricing and to foresee any challenges that may crop up. So when these guys have the level of experience that they have, you'd expect that the pricing that they give would be accurate. So a couple of reasons that we see for heavy variations that once you get into the project would be a strategy by the contractor or the subcontractor to give a cheaper price initially, but then make up the difference later on site, or they've just missed something completely. And at the end of the day, we feel that the cost to build something is the cost to build something, and if you get a really broad discrepancy in pricing, then you probably want to ask questions of your tenderers as to why there's such a range. And if it seems too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah, I think that's definitely keeping a lot of people up at night. I know my husband, who's a builder, feels that too, absolutely. And how about you, Mike? What's the first thing keeping you up at night?
Yeah, so same lines as Dan's actually, in terms of it's obviously come from a low price from install. So I was engaged last week to go and do a PS4 inspection. So it's on behalf of an engineer, basically hold a camera and a torch, and we inspect a ceiling that had been installed. Some of the stuff that I found on that ceiling was quite scary. So I'm an ex-installer, so I know what's required. We're talking really basic stuff here that is in manufacturer's design guides. It's clearly outlined in the PS1 that, hey, we need to fix this edge, we need to float this edge, or we need a back brace here. Stuff like that. So real basic stuff that had either been missed or installed incorrectly. So for me, that's really scary as an ex-tradesperson. because I'm like, how does this happen in today's day and age? So we've obviously got a main contractor who's taken a price from somebody. That installer's come along, done their install, signed the PS3, which is, hey, I've signed it, I've built it as per the design, and then they've walked away, and then we've been requested to do a PS4, and I go in there and I find this. That was pretty scary as to how that happens, but generally price driven.
Is that a common occurrence you see? I'm hoping this is off.
No, I wouldn't say it's common. I have to be careful here. I think the majority of our installers are very good. I can talk about this installation. That was probably one of the worst ones I've ever seen. So I suppose it gives weight to Dan's point, everyone's point about, using quality installers, and you kind of get what you pay for.
Yeah, absolutely.
I suppose, if you don't mind, we've kind of introduced ourselves and the roles that we hold in the business, but maybe to give some insight to everybody watching as to what our business actually is.
Yeah, great.
So at Comfortech, so we used to be called Foreman Building Systems. We're owned by Fletcher Construction now, and a couple of years back they combined our business with Tasman Insulation, which is the business that manufactures paint bats, and gave us a new name, Comfortech. But the area that Mike and I have our experiences in, it's inside a commercial building. So suspended ceilings, internal walls and partitions. So they're not holding the structure up. They're just in there to create separation and space. We're heavily involved in acoustic performance of a building, the thermal performance of a building, and we also are involved from a fire perspective. So we have a range of passive fire solutions and systems. So where Mike and I, that's the realm that we're most heavily engaged. The structure's already up, and there's a lot of fit out taking place. A lot of it's decorative, but it all has components of seismic restraint, as does most stuff these days, given the history of earthquakes. So we're on site making sure that there is a way that it had always been done, and now there is the correct practice way. And we're making sure that the people who are out there installing and doing their job are meeting current requirements, even though they might get a bit upset about that because it's more than what they used to have to do. It's all a bit over-engineered or a bit over the top from their perspectives.
Of course. Okay, that's really good for context for our viewers. Your second point of what's keeping you up at night, Dan?
Yeah, so again, probably following on with the same theme. We're seeing main contractors or builders often being left in the lurch. So probably 3 times in the last 6 months been called out to site doing what Mike just referred to as a PS4 inspection. So you get construction monitoring. So making, you're visiting site along the way through the process and just checking things off to make sure it's been done properly. And then at the end, you could go through with an engineer buddy and do a final sign off, and that comes in the form of a PS4. So there are a number of occasions where we've been on site because code of compliance, that final sign off by the council's failed due to a lack of documentation. So we're going out in a hurry to try and check all these boxes and finalize things for the main contractors, to discover that the reason things have been a bit quiet was because the subcontractors on site were doing it the way they wanted to do it. A bit of that old school mentality of it's the way that we always used to do it, and this is over the top, and we don't need it until the council inspector comes along and says, "Well, actually, guys, you do need it." Yeah. So that
frustrating.
So from our perspective and the way we get involved, that again following on in line with, what are you paying for? What's your standard of install? What's the quality? Understanding and maintaining expectations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Mike, the second.
Yeah, so to continue on this, it's the same thing. So it's massive for us. It's really popped up, in the last few months. So I suppose the thing for me is how do we change it? I listened to one of the other webinars that you had previously, and they were talking about a race to the bottom, and we've got to get away from this. And it's a very New Zealand thing that, hey, if we can find it cheaper, else we will go and get it. We don't really care what the quality is. So it's interesting. So when we deal with our architects and our engineers at the start, we get asked for lots of technical information, lots of resource goes into that. Someone has to pay for that. And then you've got a quality product which you provide, and hopefully that you are able to sell at the end. What we're seeing a lot of now is the contractors coming in and, hey, we need to save some money here. Okay, well, let's turf this product for something that's cheaper. Someone's bought it in, and hopefully no one's going to ask any questions and we'll get away with it. So in terms of how do we change that narrative going forward, for me, certainly in my role, and Dan and his team, it's about educating people about what the minimum requirements are and what can happen if you do switch out for this cheaper product. We don't want people getting left in the lurch and getting caught out because someone has to pay for that at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So that's a real challenge for us in the industry, especially at the moment when the market's pretty tight.
Yeah, I can imagine that's a universal problem. Dan, your final thing keeping you up at night. Hopefully this is the final thing and then you sleep soundly after that.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it's been a bit of a moan session, so I'm gonna break away from what I had written down and
go positive on it.
I'll offer a more positive spin. So we're based, both Mike and I are based in the Waikato. We have national roles, so we travel around a lot, but this is our home base. And a couple of weeks back, we're at the field days, and something that excites me is the innovation that we're seeing amongst our people, utilizing materials that would otherwise have gone to landfill for creating, new products. There's a company called Save Board, and they're taking. This is to be transparent. This is completely unrelated to us, but something that does, excite me, and that is. Save Board, they're taking material that's waste and they're compressing it into a board. You've got Future Post, they're taking plastics and milk bottles and compressing them into agricultural materials. And I think, it's really important for us to identify those local New Zealand innovators and look for opportunities to promote them. We're working heavily with a company, we're a distributor for them, DB Zorb, so they're an acoustic product. They do wall linings and other materials that are colourful and decorative that you'll see around schools and other commercial projects. And all the material that they use has got a high recycled content in it, and they are manufacturing and converting it in a way where it can be demounted and remounted. It can be shredded and turned into other materials like insulation. But they are really considering it from a perspective of, well, traditionally it would have been glued to the wall and that would have contaminated the product and made removal and reuse impossible because it would damage the wall, damage the product. And they're looking at alternative ways of install. So, I think going away from the negativity, we've got some great innovators and some people who are really thinking about, hey, how can we do things better in the industry? And I think we're responsible to identify who they are and offer them our support.
Yeah, I think, and even just researching that stuff, it's fascinating what products people have come up with and what they can do with, So yeah, I completely.
Rubbish. That's rubbish to everybody else.
Yeah, exactly.
Sit on some dock over in Thames and be wait to be sent to China for recycling. But these guys are saying, no, we can do that here.
We'll use it.
Yeah, in many instances, there wasn't even the equipment to do it, so they first had to invent the equipment and then they turn it into the product. Yeah, so there's a lot of innovation, which is really cool.
That's great. And I'll pass over to you, Mike, for your last one. Hopefully, it's a positive one as well.
Well, kind of positive. I suppose it's an opportunity, we want to call it. So, following on from Dan in terms of sustainability, I get asked an awful lot. Are our mineral fibre ceiling tiles recyclable? Can we recycle them somewhere? Can someone reuse them? So unfortunately, in New Zealand and even in Australia, there's no one that currently recycles or can reuse these mineral fibre tiles. And we sell thousands and thousands of these tiles a year. Us as a single company, but also the other distributors in the market are the same. So that's a real opportunity for someone here. If they know anyone, we've got a huge amount, I suppose, that are currently just going to waste. Some of the factories do take them back, but they're very strict on what product they are. They won't take anybody else's brand of product. So, when you think all that product is currently going to landfill, we're getting, high tower buildings getting refurbed.
Yeah.
Most of those mineral fibre tiles are going to the bin if they're going to be replaced.
All right. Call to action.
Yeah. It's an opportunity. I could make someone very rich.
Yeah. Well, why don't you do it yourself?
Yeah.
We're not smart enough.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't be sitting here if I had.
Yeah, right. All right, we're gonna very quickly go over to Floriana, who's gonna do the quick fire. We're just 1 minute over, so we'll just race through them.
Okay.
Over to you, Floriana.
Okay, I'm going to start with Dan. Dan, what are you reading, listening to, and watching currently?
Yeah, I'm actually reading a book. It's called The Great Wolf, and it's a bit of a controversial conspiracy theory about Hitler surviving after the war and escaping to South America. So if you cut through the conspiracy theory piece of it, it actually has a large amount of information around the state of the economy and the people who had significant influence in those areas around the time. And it's just it's interesting to learn about how much somebody can influence society and people around them.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
How about you, Mike?
Probably watching the Olympics at the moment, actually, and that's probably keeping me up late at night at the moment. Primarily watching the climbing. Those the guys and girls that do that are just freaks. That's unbelievable the way they can hang on the side of a wall, and watching that Kiwi guy go up that speed wall in what 5.2 seconds.
Yeah.
Just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the second one. For Dan, what is something do you do for yourself to help with your well-being?
I love to stay active. I think I'm at a point in my life now where I'm probably not going to become anything more, but it's more a case of holding on to what I've got. Use it or lose it. So lots of walking, still spending time in the gym, and just trying to keep up with my kids. Is basically motivated by having them always be scared of losing to me at a running race.
How about you, Mike?
Probably just being out of my lifestyle block, and that could be just doing some fencing or moving my cows or doing some stuff with the fruit trees. Otherwise, playing golf has been a big one for me, just getting out and clearing my head.
Trying to get the most out of the sun in Wellington.
Yeah.
It's difficult. Okay, so let's go to the next question. Dan, what is your motto?
I think, given the industry that we work in, I believe in measuring twice and cutting once. Making sure accuracy is always paramount in everything that I do, and not rushing, because I tend to want to rush. Pretty busy, got 1,000 things that are half finished. Also, again, both family and industry are related to try and take the emotion out of things. Sometimes we can become really charged, and it can express itself in different ways. But I think if you just sort of let things settle and then approach things with a level head, and I think that across the board you get a better outcome.
Very wise. And Mike?
Mine's probably just listen and learn. It's amazing what you can learn by just listening. To follow on from Dan's point, we're in a primarily male-dominated industry. A lot of them can be very hot-headed or very, very much say we think we're right. So by just listening, you can actually answer a lot of your questions quite easily. It's quite amazing.
That's great. So last one. What is the piece of advice for the next generation, Dan?
I think making sacrifices. There's lots and lots of things that are deemed a need to have, and I don't necessarily agree. If you want to set yourself up for future success, sometimes you got to hustle, sometimes you got to make sacrifices.
Great. And how about you, Mike?
I think mine's probably just be honest. Like a lot of people say I'm very direct, but if I've got an opinion on something, as long as you're not offending somebody and it's said with the right intent, be honest. Because there's a lot of people in our world that just want to give people the answers they want to hear, and that can be to further their careers or whatever it might be. But they'll end up getting caught out. So just be honest.
Was that great advice?
Yeah. Well, thank you both so much for your time today. I think you've given us quite a few tidbits and potentially even a business case idea. So appreciate
that.
Yeah, exactly. Copyright. So yeah, thank you both so much. And to all our viewers, please don't forget to register for our New Zealand Building People Awards happening on the 30th of August in Auckland. And we'll see you on the next episode of Light Lunch. Ka kite anō.